Okay, so this 30-minute session is going to be on one of the most amazing systems in the body, the lymphatic system. Most people probably know that the lymphatics are a system that drains fluid, and we might think immune system, and that's kind of like the general understanding. But let's have a look at some of the other really cool aspects to the lymphatic system. Before we do, what we're going to go into first is a little bit about what it is exactly, and then we'll have a look at the anatomy before we talk about the physiology. So, the lymphatic system is a network of tissues, vessels, and organs that work together to circulate fluid through the body. And it also helps defend against infection, disease, and it filters harmful substances out through the lymph nodes. On the top left here, you've got a picture of the inside of a lymph node. Some people think that looks like a kidney. It does look a little bit like a kidney, because the kidney's a little similar actually to how it filters, but this is a lymph node, and that's what it looks like on the right hand side, more zoomed out. And then in the middle, you can kind of get an idea of where all those lymph nodes are. You can see the thickening of the green. In the anatomy books, the lymphatic system is often drawn as green, but in the body, just like with the venous system and the arterial system, the fluids aren't really green or blue or red. Well, red, yes, red they are. So a lot of our blood, if it's oxygenated, is red. The lymphatics are picking up fluid that's slightly more deoxygenated, so it's probably more of a darker red or an off like blue. But it's actually an optical illusion when you look at your veins and you see the blue. They are not blue, and these ones are actually not green. But in the books, it's really useful to know that lymphatic is green, venous is blue, and artery is red. So every single day, around 20 liters of blood plasma or fluid. So basically, the blood is made up of like 90% plasma, like a water fluid. And then you've got all the other cells in there, like the hemoglobin and the oxygen, which create that red color. So they actually leak by design. They leak out of the tiny little capillary beds. So the capillary beds are the tiniest vessels that come together in that closed system. We're talking about the cardio vascular system. So the red blood and the blue blood, or the oxygenated blood and the deoxygenated blood. That actually leaks out at the very end of those branches. It's a closed system, but the very ends are leaky. So there's little gaps, spaces between in the membrane, in the covering of those vessels, and it lets the fluid come out. 20 liters a day will actually leak out and come out and be pulled back in. 17 of those liters are reabsorbed into your veins. So if you look at the capillary bed, which I have a picture of, one half is red, one half is blue. 20 is going to come out of the red, 17 is going to go back into the blue. So we're left with 3 liters. And it's around about the 3 liters that the lymphatic system is going to deal with in a day. Let's have a look into that. Before we go further though, let's have a quick look at just the structure of the lymphatic system so that we understand the parts. We've got the lymph. So when I say lymph, we mean the clear fluid that carries waste and also has immune cells in it. The lymphatic vessels are the thin tubes, just like the arteries and the veins that carry the liquid. The lymph nodes are the filters, are the little centers that filter that liquid, and they house different immune cells that can fight pathogens. The thymus, which you'll see here on the picture, is around the middle of the chest, right there. That's a little organ, bigger when you're a child, shrinks when you're older. That is one of the organs that actually matures some of your immune cells. I think it's the T cell. Yes, the T cells, which are one of the main cells inside the lymph node. The spleen is over here on the left hand side under your rib cage. Actually, I think if you go around the back and you hold the back of your rib cage, you'll feel the spleen there. Well, you won't feel it, sorry. It's underneath there. You won't feel it. And that is another part of the immune system and of the blood making system. So we're looking at just organs and places where the immune cells are matured. The tonsils, which can be considered another lymph node, slightly different. They also, because they're powerful, they protect the entrance to the body. So coming in through the mouth is probably the most dangerous place we're going to pick up the most because the skin, for example, doesn't let things through as much as the mouth would. So we have the tonsils there, which are very similar. They're also there to soak up any of these pathogens problems. And the last thing is to consider when we look at the whole lymphatic system is the bone marrow. So inside the bones there, inside the long bones, we have bone marrow, and the bone marrow can make, you may have heard about the stem cells. So we create at the end of the bones stem cells. These really amazing cells can change into any cell. So stem cells are amazing, they'll change to anything. So we do, through the stem cells, create another type of immune cell that then ends up in the lymph node. It's the B cells. So we've got T and B being made elsewhere, and then they live inside the lymph nodes to fight the pathogens. So that's the map of the lymphatic system. So we're going to go into the three major functions of the lymphatics in a minute, but just a quick mention on that fluid drainage. So the lymphatic system collects, circulates, and then it deposits the fluid into the venous system. So it's important to understand that the lymphatic system is going to soak up a bunch of fluid, probably around 3 liters, like we said, and it's going to transport that fluid through all the lymph nodes up towards the duct. So the duct is actually up in the shoulders, there's two of them, and it's going to take that fluid and put it back into the venous system. As you might know, the venous system, along with the arterial system, they're two closed loops, and they go through the heart, pumps out into the lungs, and we do the gas exchange. So we're putting the fluid from the lymph back into that system, and it gets drained and breathed out, anything that's left over, or it just continues through the system. So here's a look at the ducts. So we've got the left and right duct, DUCT, duct. 25% of your body is actually drained through the right side of, and it's in blue. So we've got the right subclavian vein under the collarbone or just behind the collarbone. That is basically a little duct or a little door that opens and the lymphatic system from in the blue area. So any lymph nodes and lymph vessels in the blue area put the liquid back into the venous system. So I'm not talking about any new concepts. I'm just repeating what I said on the last slide, but I'm showing you where it happens. 75% of the drainage from the whole body, which is quite interesting, goes into the left subclavian vein. So right there, underneath your collarbone there. Interesting. I can't really answer the question of why is 75% there and 25% there. Not sure. It's close to the heart. It's close to the place where it needs to be pumped through. I guess I don't know, but there's a really like a difference there in the percentages. So just 25 on the right, so the right side of the face, the right arm and the right chest, and then the rest of the body is through the thoracic duct, which lives on the left side. So the interesting thing, that is a capillary bed, by the way. So the capillary bed you're seeing there is where the big arteries and the big veins, they go from really big to really small. So for example, the one that comes out of the heart to send oxygenated blood around the body is probably about 3 or 4 centimeters or 2 or 3 centimeters wide. And the capillary beds, which are the very, very smallest veins and arteries, I think you'd need a magnifying glass to see them. They're so small. But they are you can see here they're a closed system. So the red comes along and then it's blue and it goes back up to the heart. In between all around the capillary beds, we have the cells. This might be a muscle tissue. This could be a bit of liver. This could be a brain. It could be anything. So that these capillary beds are absolutely everywhere, carrying all the oxygen, nutrients, and then dumping that into the cell. The cell's going to use that oxygen and other nutrients, and then the waste is going to be taken this way. That's the cardiovascular, but the lymphatic system is not a closed system. Note how these green ones are weaving in between all of the capillary beds, and they're just there, like wires, just there, sitting there, and they're going to pick up the rest of that fluid. and carry it all the way back. I think the next slide, yeah, after this slide, I'm going to show you even more zoomed in. But let's just go now and have a look. Now we understand the anatomy of the lymphatics. Let's now zoom back out and talk about the three functions, because the first one, I guess the second one is the one that everyone knows. It's the first and the third one that's quite interesting. So number one, the whole point of the lymphatics is to take the 3 liters of the 20 that's left over that's not sucked back up, and it takes it to prevent swelling, and therefore it manages the fluid levels. If we didn't do that, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody with a super swollen leg or a swollen hand. It could be that they've got edema from like a problem with this system, 100%. But there are actually a couple of other reasons why people get swelling. So we shouldn't always assume that swelling in the leg or the arm is just lymphatic or just caused by the lymphatics. For example, if we have heart problems, if the heart is failing, that can also cause a problem in the cardiovascular fluid system, and we get a different type of swelling. And in clinic, where I assess patients, I've been trained to look at the different types of swelling. For example, if it is to do with the heart, you compress the swelling. I wouldn't advise you did this with your students, and you might see that it's called pitting edema. You press the swelling and it doesn't pop back straight away. You see the little crater that you've created with your thumb, and it just stays in a crater and maybe doesn't come back at all, or you can see the dimple, it just stays. So my point is not every swelling is a lymphatic problem, but it can be a lymphatic problem. And there are people that have issues with this system and the valves and stuff. So that can happen. Number two is the scanning for pathogens. So it's taking the fluid up to the lymph nodes, and that's where it's going to filter it, kill off whatever it wants to kill off, and then send the clean liquid up to the left collarbone. It goes in if it's the left side or whole, if it's anywhere but the right arm and face there. If it's the right arm, it goes there. So that's all part of the system. It kind of follows on from number one, because you're going to be finding pathogens and stuff within that fluid where the cells were on the previous slide. There's going to be all sorts of stuff in and out happening at that point there. So it's pulling the fluid to stop the edema, and then it's scanning it like that for pathogens in the lymph nodes. But the third thing, which is so cool, and I found out the other day that my partner, Timo, who's a scientist working in pharmaceutical, he works with a drug for epilepsy that is mixed with sesame oil. And they're now looking into whether they can make the drug more effective by using the lymphatic system, because as you can see on step 3 or job number 3, the lymphatic system is the thing that takes the fats. So going back to this picture here, when the veins, or when the artery, sorry, picks up the nutrients that you eat from the gut, and I almost said vein because actually in the gut it's called the portal vein that takes the nutrients, but normally it is the artery. It takes them up through the gut, all of what we eat, and takes it to the liver. But unfortunately, the fats are not water soluble, so they have to be covered in something else, which is a process which I don't understand fully, but they get covered in something else, and then they become too big to fit through the gate. They can't fit into the venous or arterial system, and that's where the lymphatics come in. We transport the fats, and guess where we dump them? Guess where we put them back in? Up in that same duct, whether it's left or right side. We actually transport them and we put them back in the venous system, in the circulatory system, basically. So cool. Fun fact for sure. So number one, just a couple more notes on each of the three. So fluid management, we've already talked a little bit about edema and that it prevents the edema or swelling. I think the next slide, yes, we're going to go a little bit more into how it works. So a couple of words for you. Interstitial fluid is the fluid, basically it's water, whether it's in the bloodstream or it's in between the cells because it came out of the bloodstream. It's basically all water, and it's named a different name depending on where you find it. So blood plasma or interstitial fluid. And when it gets taken into the lymph system, it's suddenly called lymph. But if you looked at that liquid in a jar, you'd be like, oh, it's the same liquid. It's just where is it in the system gives it the name. So blood, plasma, interstitial fluid, and lymph. So just going through that fluid exchange again, we've got the blood coming in, oxygenated, coming down to the capillary beds. It's leaking out to give all the things it needs to give to the cells. And then the venous system's taking the rest. The lymphatics are sucking out the leftover fluid at that point and the fats. So yes, we're going to zoom in a little bit just so we can understand a little bit more about how we get the fluid in and out. So you can see here on this picture, the blood's coming along, dropping everything off. It's going through the little gaps in the membrane. So the membrane is the covering of the arteriole or the tiny branch. And there's little gaps to let all of that fluid out. So now all the fluid is pouring into this area. These are not fried eggs, they are cells. And in between the cells is the interstitial fluid. So the tiny gaps in between the veins and the arteries, or the arterioles here, are much smaller than the gaps here. So you can see that in our body, things like to move from high concentration to low concentration. So it's high concentration in the vessels at the top, so low concentration out between the cells. And then again, low concentration inside the lymph. And that's how that all moves in between all the cells. And then I zoomed in even more to show you because it's really nice to have a visual of how that fluid is all moving around. So leaky capillaries create an environment that is constantly exchanging the fluids. Roughly 20 litres a day pass through your leaky capillaries, and about 17 are sucked back up. We actually only have about 4 to 5 litres of blood in total, but by the time it's circulated all day within 24 hours, it reaches 20 litres. When I asked a group recently, how many litres of blood do you think we have? We got some really funny answers. Some people said 100 liters. And I get it. Like I was thinking, yeah, because a liter's not that much. Like, how is my body only 5? That's crazy. The valves. So it's important to note about valves because I'm going to move on in a minute to how we move the lymph. So let me start by saying in your red artery system, you've got layers of smooth muscle in the vessel that squeeze the blood. So the heart is the main pump, of course. The heart's like boom. And then inside the arteries, we've got layers of muscle that are also helping move the fluid if needed. In the veins, the blue, and the lymph vessels, the green, we don't have much of that smooth muscle. So the body relies on our movement, the movement of our body, to pump a lot of this fluid. If you need an example that you can understand, think about sitting on a flight for a long time on an airplane. They always tell you to get up and do some pedaling with the feet. That's because if you sit for 12, 15 hours on a flight without moving, you will get an incredible amount of fluid gathering in your legs that won't be pushed back very well. And that's it. And that's why movement is key for these systems. So that's number one. Moving on to the second one, the pathogens. So fluid is, we understand now that how it gets absorbed, it's in the system. These are the lymph nodes. How many lymph nodes do we have? Well, what did people say the other day? Some people said 50. And then we looked at the map again of the body, like you could see earlier on the map, there's obviously hundreds. The answer is 5 to 700. So we've got little centers in the body where the lymph nodes are a lot. Like in our human body, the most are up in the neck. So we've got up in the neck, the most, followed by, I think, in the belly here, because it's for the legs. These are called the inguinal lymph nodes, so the groin. There's quite a lot there. I mean, most of us remember a time when we've had an infection. You can feel it in your neck, sometimes in the groin, behind the knees, and then in the axilla. So that is the armpit. So those are the main ones there. I didn't mean to press that. Those are the main ones there, but there's like 700 of these. And actually the ones It's quite a big, big, big lymph node. I can't remember if it's exactly like if there's sizes of different sizes. I can't remember now, but I know that there's a big lymph node in the belly called the cisterna chyli, and quite a few people in my profession as an osteopath, they do techniques to drain up from there because it's quite a big crossroads from the lower body. As you can see here, it would go up and go into the duct up here into the venous system. So quick look at the anatomy of the lymph node. So we've looked at a lymph, we're looking at this, we've sliced in half, we've just cut it open like an apple from the center. You've got a couple of different things going on here. You've got these little entrances, these little pipes here. You can see if you look really closely, you can see that those little lines on the inside, those are no return valves. Once liquid goes through, it can't go back. It's a one-way system. The same happens at the top. It goes back out of the lymph node and cannot fall back. We do, both in the venous system and the lymphatics, we do sometimes break these. These do sometimes get weak. And some people have conditions where things are a little bit stretchier and sometimes those valves can stop working and we can get that backflow. But the design is like that. We've got the B cells and the T cells here. And you can see here the artery and the vein. That's actually bringing blood supply in to get the B cells and the T cells in and to replenish them and take stuff out again. Really clever. So the lymph comes in, let's say it came in from the hand and it's come up to the elbow. It's gone through here. The B and T cells are fighting pathogens, any bacteria and things like that, fighting those off and then sending the fluid clean, nice and clean up through there. That's just another, I think there's a double up with the slide there because I've told you about that. So just a reminder again of that, but I won't go through it. And then we finish on number three. So number three was the third and final job of the lymphatics, just the fats. And this is where I've kind of already alluded to some of it because I mentioned Timo, but this is what it looks like inside. So over on the left, let's just like go through this step by step. This is your small intestine. So you've eaten your food. And if we were to cut a little piece of that open just to have a look at the inside of the gut, this is what we would get. And this is called a villi. And these cells here are water soluble kind of cells that sit tightly together, but they let things through. So the gut is breaking down all of the food into the tiniest pieces, and then it's going through this membrane, this line here, and it's being absorbed into the circulatory system. The nutrients are going to be taken up to the liver and then used, and of course, taken up to the whole, round the whole body. This is where we get the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, everything. And then the reason why we're zooming in here is to see that this is where the fats that you eat. So you've eaten the fats and the carbs here. Most of the carbs have gone into the portal vein, which takes it up to the liver. But then the fat turns up and it's too big to get in. It's it's too big because it's covered with another thing on top that makes it able to get through the water soluble layer. And therefore, we need to get it into a vessel that has big enough gaps to fit it in. And then it says, don't worry, I'll take it all the way up and I'll pop it back in the blue up in the shoulder. And that's what I meant by that earlier. That's what it looks like on a microscopic level. So that is basically all of the theory. And what I wanted to do to finish was show you a very quick, it's 5 minutes. You can do it seated or standing up. It's up to you. Standing up's probably better if you can. I'm going to show you a quick lymphatic drainage technique. It's a doctor. I'm going to have to put the name on there because I knew I'd forget. I should have written it on the slide. This is actually a doctor in America that kind of coined the big six, lymphatic drainage. It's a really cool thing. Basically, we're going to look at the main areas where the lymph nodes are and do a quick, and it's like a quick practice that we can do to really stimulate the lymphatic drainage. I think this is a perfect thing to add into our yoga classes. It's very safe, although you might need to be quite communicative and tell people don't hit yourself too hard because we're going to be tapping and rubbing. So, of course, if somebody has pain or gets dizzy or just doesn't feel right when they're rubbing these areas, especially the neck, because the neck also has the big arteries. So let's say worst case scenario, somebody has got bad arteries in the neck, maybe they're clogged up a little bit, maybe they've had a stroke before and that kind of thing. Maybe we would tell them not to rub their neck too hard. But this is a great way. So this guy really believes, I mean, he has a whole Instagram around this and it's really, really good to read it. Um, Stop Chasing Pain, I think it's called. I'll link it to you as well. But he does a lot on pain relief and just general health. He said if you don't get this system going, he says doesn't think you can be generally healthy at all. And obviously he promotes movement. He says go for a walk, but before you go for the walk, do the big six. And he says that going for a walk is one of the best things you can do for your lymphatic system, but do this big six first to improve it even more. So I'm going to stop sharing and I just want to see what you can see. I need to see myself because I'm going to stand up real quick. This will be another few minutes. Okay. It's like 28 degrees today here, but I still get a bit chilly. Right. Okay, so if you can stand, stand up at the brightness, but don't worry if you can't. Okay, so whoops, I almost fell back. So number one, we're going to start with the collarbones here. So take your right or left hand. So this is the area where that duct is. What we do first, and it can be a light touch, is just 6 times or 6 or 7 times. You don't need to push in, it's just stimulating the skin around the collarbone and just underneath as well. Then we tap 10 times. This is where you can tell people, be careful, don't tap too hard, don't hurt yourself. Go for the other side. So we rub, 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 rub. Tap, 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 tap. Now to the neck, we've got the lymph nodes all in here, really gently. 6 times. Keep your breath nice and steady as well. And then tap, 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 really gently. Otherwise, people are like, oh, I'm lightheaded. You've just blocked off the arteries. Good. Now we're going to go down to so we did the ducts up here, but we're going to do the armpits. So you don't have to go in the armpit. You can just go around here and just do that. And then just tapping. Same on the other side. And then come into the belly. We've got that big cisterna chyli node in here, but a nice bit, like this is a huge gathering before it goes into the left side over here. So we're going to just rub, of course, be very careful if you've got any issues, bladder issues, bowel issues, belly issues, really gently. Onto the inguinal area, just there. So we've got loads of lymph nodes here. Circle, 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 circle. I already feel completely energized right now and it's evening. So I hope we're both going to be all right going to bed. And then finally, it's behind the knees. So you just go like that and rub, 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 rub. Tap, 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 tap. There is also, of course, something to be said for starting down there and moving up. You could also do that. Maybe that's even better. And then it's about shaking, and you go up and down using your ankle like that. So dorsiflex, so go up and down nice and gently, especially if you've got any issues with your bones or your joints or you've got ankle problems. So we're going to have a different mix of people in all of our classes. So be gentle with them. It doesn't have to be super vigorous. If you're really keen on massive lymphatic drainage, you could do some big ones if you're happy to. That is the big six. Now go for your walk. And that's what they say is really good for the drainage of the lymphatic system. And now you understand why as well. You know, all those areas are lymph nodes. And exhale. There you go. Lymphatic system.